Nice on that boost. Wow. Number 10.
Which is the one? This guy?
Oh, right here. Moussini or the Chamber 10?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Just a little sip. I ain't even ate yet today.
Me neither. We'll be rolling. Welcome back to Mind the Game, brought to you by UNINTERRUPTED and Wondery. In this episode, we discuss the playmaker, the initiator, the heliocentric player that runs the team, breaks the first line of defense, plays cat and mouse. In this era, they have to be able to make plays for their teammates, not just score, and vice versa. In the old days, it was the point guard that ran the team, but wasn't necessarily taxed with scoring the ball. Nowadays, we've all become a similar position player that's able to control the game and make plays, whether it's for others or for themselves. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Mind the Game. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Well, first, how's the knee?
Did you see me limp in here?
Thought I'd ask.
Oh man, like I said last episode, man, it's been a hell of a lot better, but it's getting better though.
Yeah.
I mean, last time we spoke, I was, but it's getting better.
Yeah.
It's getting better.
So we also spoke about your off season, how like that starts the cycle again for next year. So you don't really take time off; you just do other things.
Right.
You take a little bit off, you start doing other things. So how do you keep yourself, your mind, your body active and busy when you're dealing with that?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the most challenging thing. And even though I can't like do much as far as like lower body stuff, I'm still like in the weight room, like
Still get it in,
upper body. The one thing I am able to do a little bit is ride like a stationary bike, just to kind of keep the blood flowing and things of that nature, keep the momentum, the flexibility as much as possible.
In the knee.
In the knee. But it's definitely, I'm not a guy that likes to sit around.
I'm the same.
I have a lot of energy and I hate sitting around. So this has definitely been almost 2 weeks after the season. They always tell you take time off. I'm just not that guy.
Stir crazy.
Yeah, I'm going crazy.
I'm the same. The same. How does that what's that like for you? Like for me, I'm anxious if I can't get a sweat.
Yeah.
What's your day like if you're like, I don't know when I'm fitting my workout in?
Right, it's just the same. I mean, it's just something that's so abnormal,
right.
When it comes to just not being able to work out, not being able to sweat, and things of that nature. So I guess you make up for it by getting in the steam room, get in the sauna, sit outside, I can mess around a little bit with my daughter, nice, so that definitely helps. Just try to stay active in some way, shape, or form.
You get in the pool at all?
You know what? I don't spend much time in the pool, but it's something I think I should.
Yeah, same. I don't either, but it's great for you.
Yeah, but it's definitely great for you. I mean, it takes all the pressure off of you when it comes to unloads all the joints and things of that nature. So, my daughter is a big pool girl.
Yeah.
So that definitely is a reason for me to get in it and mess around with her.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, these playoffs have been amazing.
Yes, they have.
Second round, I believe. The first 6 games, the road team won.
Which is that the first time?
I think it
has to be the first time in NBA history.
First time. I think one time, like in 80 or 81, the road team won 49% of games in the playoffs. But typically, that's something that's changing, I think, with 3-point variance, and we can get into that. But I thought one of the things that we may want to touch on before we get into the bulk of this episode or discussion is some of these role players stepping up. We've seen Mikal Bridges make some big defensive plays. Yeah. We've seen, Hart for the Knicks just bring that energy and kind of do everything on the floor. Yeah. Caruso recently had big moments. Yeah.
Nembhard,
Nesmith, Christian Brown, Buddy Hield stepped up. Talk a little bit about like role players and how important it is for them to have their moments. Moments in time, but also just that relentless competitive nature from your supporting act.
I mean, we both know that in order for you to have success in our league, the role players have to play a huge role.
Is that right?
You know, they have to be able to star in their role and be super confident in that role. They're not trying to be the star player.
Right.
You know, they're not trying to go outside of what they do. They know exactly what their objective is, and they go do it by a team. You know, and you know, the people that we just named, you know, so far in the postseason, they've literally just been doing their job, and it's the reason why they've had some success. You know, you look at, you know, Indiana at this point right now, you know, up 3-1, you know, versus Cleveland, has a lot to do with their role players. And yes, we've seen the big time shot by Halliburton.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen the big time, you know, shots by Pascal Siakam. You know, but those role player guys, you know, the Nembhard, the Neesmiths, you know, those guys, you know, TJ McConnell, you know, those guys have been coming in and just, they haven't let the spark go down.
Right.
You know, when the guys come in off the bench and those role players come on off the bench, or the star players go to the bench, those guys just keep it going.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why the success has been happening.
You can't win without their efforts, their contributions,
absolutely
right?
not. Absolutely
There's too many pockets in games. There's too many things happen. You know, it was interesting thinking last night, what was it, Game 4, OKC, Denver. There was a period where it was both benches that were carrying that game, making threes, making plays, getting stops. You know, especially they played Friday night, Sunday, lunchtime. Legs are tired. You need guys to step up and make plays, right?
Absolutely. Because, I mean, you know, you being a star player, you know, I've had my moments as a star player. You know, the bulk of the responsibility is going to be on us. You know, and that's from a game plan situation, from a mindset, from holding everybody accountable to getting everybody, making sure everybody's in the right position and things of that nature. And it's taxing, especially in a postseason game. You know, you're going to have 4 or 5 guys matched up against you from, you know, bigger guys, taller guys, you know, smaller guys that want to just get up underneath you, you know, and it could be taxing. And like you said, having a Friday night game and then going to a Saturday afternoon game, less than 48 hours, that's when those role players, they come in with that energy. You know, maybe the guy that didn't play as much Friday night, you know, now you give him those minutes, you know, that Saturday afternoon, and you get that spark that you needed, the team needed. And that's what it's about.
Yeah, I always say too, I might have said it on our show here, but you know, leadership, hierarchy, and buy-in. And like every round of the playoffs, you see that on every team becoming clearer and clearer. Obviously, teams go up and down. You know, Cleveland's in a bad moment, some injuries, kind of out of rhythm. Indiana's like flying, so you get different variants within there. But just that leadership, hierarchy, buy-in, and like that is where the role players really thrive. When they understand, they buy in. We know who the leader is or the stars. We know, you know, that everyone believes in the coach and has buy-in on their staff, but it's that hierarchy, right, that becomes so important, that kind of ties, that allows you to weather tough nights or bad moments in a series, because it's always going to come, right? The league's too good to like just cruise through.
Right.
So it's always fascinating to see every round how that kind of gets more and more streamlined, and you can kind of see the identity of teams.
Yeah, I mean, you could look at some of the, you know, the best championship runs, even some of the best finals moments has come from guys being stars in their roles. You know, all the shots Big Shot Bob made, you know, the shots Derek Fisher made. Right.
Steve Kerr.
Yeah, Steve Kerr. John Paxson, you know, Ray Allen. You know, I was a part of that one, you know, and those guys were like, when you talk about guys being stars in their role to a T, you know, those guys make big plays, and the best thing about it, they don't ever jump outside of what they are and who they are and what they commit to the team, you know, and you know, we've had some great moments throughout NBA history from some of the greatest guys that just literally just started their role at that particular time.
Yeah, for sure. This episode is sponsored in part by American Express. American Express knows that for an obsessive basketball fan like me, the playoffs mean a lot of travel time. Between broadcasting games and catching up with old teammates, I'm on the road almost every week, from Boston to LA and everywhere in between. After all these years, I've learned that the journey is as important as the destination. That's why I've always tried to find a spot to stretch, grab a coffee, and get my mind right before heading over to the arena. Fortunately, there's a card that makes every part of that journey better. With Amex Platinum, you earn 5 times membership rewards points on prepaid hotels and flights booked through AmexTravel.com on up to $500,000 on flight purchases per year. Plus, you get access to the Centurion Lounge, which makes travel that much more enjoyable. That's the powerful backing of American Express. Terms apply. For more information, visit americanexpress.com/travel. Well, let me flip it to the other side of this whole thing. That's the star players, right? So we talked about Anthony Edwards and the step he took as a playmaker. But let's take this all the way back. Now we have this, whether you call it the heliocentric player, the initiator. When I grew up, long time ago, when I started playing this game in the late 80s, started late, but when I started playing, you were taught to be a true point guard.
Yeah.
Run your team.
Yeah.
Make your teammates better. Shoot less, but make them. Make a high percentage. Shoot when you're open. Make plays when it counts. And conversely, the scorers in the 80s and 90s, they weren't asked to pass the ball.
At all.
Right? They were asked to score. And I have some numbers here. So in 95, top 10 scorers in the NBA, only one averaged over 5 assists. I think it was MJ. But think about that, 1 assist,
95, okay.
In 1995. Same year, top 10 assists in the league, top 10 guys in assists, only 5 averaged over 15 points a game. Right? So there's a discrepancy between points and assists. You go to 05, top 10 scorers, 5 averaged over 5 assists. So it went from 1 to 5, and then 8 of the top 10 assist guys averaged over 15 points. In 2015, top 10 scorers, 6 averaged over 5 assists, and in the top 10 assist guys, 9 averaged over 15 points. Go to 2025, you got, of the top 10 scorers, 8 averaged over 5 assists. So pretty much everybody, right, averaged over 5 assists. And the top 10 assist guys, 8 averaged over 15 points. So point guards weren't really taught 30, 40 years ago to score the ball. They're taught to run the team. Scorers weren't taught to pass the ball. Let's get him a shot. Let's run him off screens. Let's get him in the post, whatever it is. And then, back then it was 3 out, 2 in. Right? You had a power forward that played on the block. You had a center that played around the basket. Then the rules changed. We went to illegal D and hand checking rules changed, which led to pace and space. Spacing went from 2 bigs to 1. Played a lot more off the elbow, a lot more of that wing, mid-post ISO game to try to space the floor. Then we went to spread pick and roll where guys are getting downhill. The play is in front of them now, right? In the old days when I came in the league, we'd throw it in the post. 2 guys were lifted in the parking lot because of the legal defense rules. So a lot of times if you wanted to double, you're not always going to make a play out of that because you're going to throw it. They're already on their bike. It's going to go around the horn. Someone's going to get an assist, but not the playmaker. Right. Now that everyone's spreading the floor, getting downhill, I think it's made a big difference. Add to that, we've recognized the value of shooting. So the floor is loaded. I don't know if you've ever seen some of these clips of the Suns-Bulls finals where guy comes off a screen and he runs to 17 feet, not to 3, catches a shooter, doesn't shoot, and then 2 guys are fighting for post position on the same team. He throws in the post. Everyone's inside the paint. So spacing's totally changed. So that creates space, having more space, and then playing faster against unsettled defenses. So the analytics revolution, right? We recognize now that scoring in the first 6 to 8 seconds of the shot clock, or every 6 to 8 seconds of the shot clock, your points per possession, your efficiency goes down.
Creating more possessions,
right? So there's more possessions, but also your efficiency is high when you're playing against an unsettled defense, right? So the game's changed in all these ways. One of the other things is, in order to combat, these great players, we started switching everything. We want to take actions away. So now we look at the playoffs and everything's a pick-on game, other than maybe Denver and Golden State. But the pick-on game is because, for a number of reasons, they're switching everything. So why run a bunch of actions? They switch.
It's going to bring up the guy that you want to be in the action and go from there.
Bring up the guy, okay, and now it's about spacing. So all of these factors have led us into a place where you need the lead guy not only to handle the ball, bring it up the court. You see Joker bring the ball up the court at 7 feet. Yourself, you basically played point guard your whole career. So whoever is that playmaker, that decision maker, is the first line of attack. Who can attack early? And now you have to be able to play cat and mouse. I think one of the things the casual fan has to understand, it looks random. It looks pick on, but the spacing, the angles, the opportunities, it's very nuanced because the defenses have gotten so sophisticated.
Yeah, absolutely.
When in your career, because I think you want to pass.
Right.
You just physically can score the ball with your skill and physical ability, but you want to play make. When did you see the game, and when did you kind of find a comfort in that? When did you see the game as far as,
when is this
guys start to shift where they have to make the play as well?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I came in 03 where there was still two bigs on the block. You know, you still had teams with two bigs on the block, and there was not a lot of space out there. And for the first few months of my rookie season, I did start at point guard. You know, I started at point guard alongside, Ricky Davis was our two guard, Darius Miles, Carlos Boozer, and just Junior Ilgauskas, and I was the point guard. So, I knew that, coming in that I was have to get guys shots. You said it. You said in the 95 season, there was one guy that was in the top 10 scoring that averaged over 5 assists, and that was MJ. I always thought to myself when I was growing up just watching basketball, his name was the shooting guard because he was the one that was shooting the damn ball.
Right?
And the point guard, when you watch it, me and my guys always talk about when you're growing up watching the game, there was literally only maybe two guys ever bringing the ball up, and that was the starting point guard and the backup point guard. Right. There was not many guys bringing the ball up. If you watch some of the 80s games and even some of the early 90s games, like if you watch the Knicks, when they have, Mark Jackson, John Starks never brought the ball up. Yeah. Pat Ewing never got a rebound and busted out on the break. Right. Yeah. When even when Mark went to, Indiana, Reggie he never really brought the ball up. Right. And obviously Rick Smits and Dale Davis, those guys didn't bust out on the break. No. You had those guys. It was the point guard, he brings the ball up, he gets everybody involved. He knows where guys should be, how they should move, he knows the system by a T. And then, the game started to shift. I think, you had guys like Grant Hill and Scottie Pippen, Tony Kukoc. Yeah. You had these bigger, longer wings. Point forwards, that started to change the game, but it was still minute, even in the 90s, it was not many guys, there was outliers, but then you started to have the early 2000s, and then when I started coming to the league, you had the Tracy McGrady's, Kobe would bust out, once I moved, over and started playing the wing, then, I started to be more of a point forward, and the game started to shift, I believe, probably, late teens, obviously, what you guys doing in Phoenix, you guys had multiple bust out guys. Some, Tricks would, get the rebound and bust it out, and if you were ahead, he would throw it up ahead to you, Joe Johnson, could being a 6'6" wing, but could bust out, and the game just started to shift, and the way you guys played, the way at times that San Antonio played when they decided that Timmy was just going to be the 5. Yeah. Then they started to realize, okay, we need to create more space for Timmy, and then that's when you had Tony, Manu, Michael Finley at times. They brought in McDyess, to give them more space. The game started to change then. I would say, late in the teens, and our league. It's a copycat league. Sure. One team doing with success, okay. Right. Then everybody starts to see if they have that one player where now we can surround him with space. Right. And the game started to shift to, like you said, in 2025. Now there's 8 guys out of the top 10 scoring with 5 assists per game or more. Right. Because now. And
by the way, it's not 5. It's that now all of them are 6, 7, 8 assists.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And that just comes from now the responsibility of the main player and the responsibility of the guy that handles the ball. Not only are you're responsible for scoring and putting us into action, you're also responsible for getting guys involved as well, because the defense is going to attract. There's a lot of double teaming before you even get into the action. Guys come across half court. Guys are double team Steph Curry as soon as he crosses half court. Right. We're not waiting for Draymond to come up into the pick and roll. Right. We're gonna try to get the ball out your hands now. You start hunting defensively where Anthony Edwards sees a matchup that he knows he's gonna hunt. I want this guy in the pick and roll, and teams say, okay, well we know you're gonna switch, and then as soon as we switch, we're gonna fire. Right. Get the ball out of your hands. Now you have to be able to make a decision and make a play. So, our game has definitely changed, a lot, but. It's not, like you said, to the normal fan, it's not random. It's not random.
It's random with a purpose.
With a purpose, right. Yes. And sometimes it looks, a little chaos or a little chaotic at times, but it is definitely purposeful, basketball when it comes to the way the game is played now. obviously in 2025 compared to 1995.
Yeah, it's the positionless era, right?
Yeah.
Where the positions are not what they used to be. Like you said, the point guard, the two guard.
Right.
It's positionless basketball, and that can take on different looks, right? Like you said, maybe a team plays without a center.
Yeah.
Center. Maybe your best player is Nikola Jokic.
Right.
He's bringing the ball up the court sometimes. But what it's done is we've now created rosters with shooting to create space for the creator, and then the creator has to be the one to knock the first domino down. Yeah. So you're seeing guys that aren't necessarily quote unquote traditional point guards get the ball in their hands, go try to break the first line of defense because they have space, puts defense in a bind. So defense have to get more clever. Now, like you said, are they firing, hitting, getting the ball out of his hands? Right. Are they going to a soft zone? Whatever it is that they're doing, they got to be able to make that decision, right? Because you want them to have the ball because you want to try to go early when the defense is not set. At the same time, when they junk it up, they got to be able to read and react.
Right. I mean, and it's always it's like a fine line or whatever the case may be. Because you look at a guy like Allen Iverson, who's 6 foot, 6'1", if you want to be generous.
Maybe.
$180, but he came into our league as a flat out scorer. But if it was the 80s or 90s, it would have automatically been he's the point guard. Right. That is your body type. That is what you look like. And they even tried it early on when he got to the Sixers. Jerry Stackhouse was there still. I believe Derek Coleman was there still. Right. Okay, you're the point guard. You're 6 foot, 180. Right. You're the point guard.
You handle the ball, you bring it up.
And then at one point throughout his rookie year, he goes 5 straight games with 40 points.
Right.
Like, oh shit, he's not the fucking point guard.
Right.
This guy's a scorer, and we need to bring someone in.
Right. Eric
Snow.
But isn't that interesting? They went in that era. We went, he scored 40 5 times. He's got to be our 2 guard. In our era, we would just be like, the ball's in his hands.
It would be Ja Morant.
Right.
It would be Ja Morant.
Right.
It would be Derrick Rose when Derrick Rose, was at his height. It's not like, okay, put the ball in his hands. Let's create instant offense, quick offense, get into it, and we figure out the rest later.
Right.
So the game's definitely changed.
It is, and it's fun to see like the different types of playmakers, the different types of initiators.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, one of the kind of cornerstones is the James Harden player, where he, and Luka's a little bit like that now, like where they have the ball, but they're amazing passers. You were like this. You're just in a way your own category, but the guy that can, get what they want offensively, whether it's to make their teammates better, read the defense, manipulate the defense, or they have the 3 ball, both of them have the step back, both have the floater, that player that can almost, you run everything through them, right? So what's happened now, I think, is we went from having that guy, make all the plays, all the decisions. Defense is spreading the floor with shooting. Defense is getting a little better. Now we're asking those shooters to be able to now play off a closeout.
Yeah.
They now, on the good teams, have to be able to put it on the floor, try to touch the paint again, create another closeout, open shot, or a 2-on-1. And I think that evolution, is where fans got to really appreciate what's happening today. I think sometimes we think it's all too similar, but sometimes the beauty in it is that it's jazz, right? We're making it up as we go along, we're riffing, but out of principles. And I think that's what's exciting about the game, that maybe certain common elements for the fan are difficult to read. And I think that's where the game has been fun for me to see it go, is seeing more people play out of principles than come down, get into a set.
Absolutely.
Utah used to run the UCLA stuff. Another team used to run whatever. All that stuff, different sets, which was cool too. But now I love that it's more about reading and reacting in a random setting out of principles. Have you noticed a time when that because I feel like that's been the last 4 or 5 years. It's been like, and another reason, in a coaching scenario, you can't take the chance to run a play, and if your lead guy does not have the ball, him not getting the ball.
Right.
So we put the ball in their hand at the start. We just call up the worst defender we put pick on. Because instead of running a set, everyone switches, especially if they're off the ball. Like, let's put Jalen Brunson in the corner. Let's run some action over here. Let's get it to him on the weak side. What if he doesn't get it?
Right.
Now you got this 3rd, 4th best player on your team making the decision in critical times in a playoff game. So it's interesting to me how quickly the game's evolving, how defenses are taking a step, then offenses are taking a step, and it's continually cat and mouse between offense and defense. Have you felt that over the last 5, 6 years?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, Our league, when it comes to pace and space, that's number one. And if you do have any type of action you want to get into, that's where you want to try to get up the floor fast. Give yourself some more time. With the shot clock to be able to get into the quick action.
Right.
But it's not like like you said, it's not the old Utah where they running autos. It's not the triangle with Phil Jackson where you're hitting the pinch post and you got gaggle action on one side and things like that. No, it's now. 77s. Quick, get to a 77, which is a double drag. Get to it quick. Let's see what they do. Or it's just a flat screen in the middle. 3 guys on the baseline. You got your best player handling the ball. You got your second best player setting the pick and roll at the nail. Let's see what the defense do. You're getting into the actions really fast. And if you want to get your players like Joker or like you said, or Luka or certain guys the ball on the low post, then you give them the choice action where the guy brings the ball down. He's on the opposite block. You got one guy setting the pin down at the free throw line. You got the other guy setting it at the opposite block, and you allow your star player to decide which route he want to go. But these are just quick actions, to be able to get to the action and then allow your star player to have time. And if he decides, hey, I can make a move here to make myself score, or I know that so many eyes are on me,
pressure.
I'm going to attract
pressure.
4 eyes, sometimes 6 eyes. Numbers game start. I know I got 3 guys. I know we got a 3-on-2 on the backside, a 4-on-3. Sometimes, you got a super great player. You get a 4-on-2.
Right.
You had 2 guys try to double. So that game is played every single night in our league. By the best players and by the best coaches.
I mean, it's always great to see a coach draw up a nice ATO.
Oh, it's beautiful. I love it.
Action. It's great, right? It's great. But the reality is, in our league, they're going to switch so much of that stuff. It's hard to do on the fly, and it's not as beneficial as getting up and playing against an unsettled defense, right?
That's the best way to score.
Right, it's the best way to score in our league, and it's making sure that your lead guy has the ball, is making the decisions time and time again, because that is the pressure that breaks defenses over and over. And I think it's interesting, let's talk about different types of playmakers. We talk about Anthony Edwards trying to now take that next step, which he is starting to really grow in that. But you see other guys that have had to take that step too, like Jayson Tatum. He came in league more as a scorer. Now he's often bringing the ball up the court, often initiating the action, the one handling and pick and roll, and he's had to grow as a playmaker. When he breaks the paint for them and kicks it out with all those players around, that's when they're one of the historically elite team.
They're historically one of the best teams that the NBA has ever seen, and they start their blender, the word we've used so much.
Sure.
And the last thing you want to do as an opponent versus the Celtics is be put in the blender.
Right.
Because there's too many guys that can do multiple things. They have too many guys that can shoot, dribble, and create. Jayson Tatum is able to break a guy down one-on-one, and he gets into the paint, and you have X4 or X5 trap the box. You got to understand that his 5, which is Al Horford or Porzingis, his ass is not in the dunker.
Right.
He's on the 3-point line, and once he skips, now you got rotation and his closeout game. Now he's swinging it to Jalen Brown, or he's swinging it to Derek White, or swinging it to Drew Holiday, swinging it to Peyton Pritchard. This is the best thing they do to get you in a blender, and they're spraying for threes. They're spraying for threes or get to the lane and dunking that, which is going to be Tatum and Brown. So, I think Jayson Tatum's growth has allowed them as well. Obviously, their personnel is fucking dynamic and great. We all know that. They got, the trade for Porzingis, to be able to get Drew Holiday in the fashion they got him, made them even more elite. I mean, Al Horford coming back, has given him another, presence.
He's so smart.
He's so smart. I've played against him my whole career, or his whole career. I'm older than him. He's so smart. So the growth of Tatum and Brown has just allowed Joe and his coaching staff to be even more dynamic, and when you can have guys that have that growth mindset to say, okay, you know what, my first 4 years, I was really good in this league. I can ride this wave and I could probably be a Hall of Famer still.
Of course.
But I want to continue to grow, and if I continue to grow, then our team automatically grows, and I think JT and JB has done it.
You know what I love more than the perfect assist? The perfect story. And I've got just the one for you. Audible knows that there's no greater thrill out there than yours and Audible's gripping new original that'll have you right on the edge of your seat. Jon Hamm stars as Jack Bergen in The Big Fix, a Jack Bergen mystery. Think you know the story of Dodger Stadium? Think again. This noir thriller follows Jack, an ex-FBI agent brought back into the game by an old flame, to investigate a murder case that's not what it seems. What starts as a simple homicide investigation unravels into a complex web of conspiracy surrounding a Mexican-American community and the construction of Dodger Stadium. Trust me, this one's a game changer featuring an all-star cast, including Ana de la Reguera, Omar Epps, and Aaliyah Shawkat, with a special appearance from John Slattery. From the brilliant mind of John Mankiewicz and the director Aaron Lipstadt comes a story that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Like any great play, timing is everything, and now's the time to listen. Go to audible.com/thebigfix and listen now. That's audible.com/thebigfix. My only gripe with the Celtics sometimes is the discipline to get space, to find angles off the first action, set up some pick and rolls, to make sure they're getting downhill, touching the paint. They're so good that sometimes I think they settle.
You think they get bored sometimes because they've been doing this shit so long?
Almost prisoners of their success. You know, in the finals a bunch lately. They won it. They had incredible regular seasons. You know what it's like when you have big
seems like
successful
sometimes,
teams.
it seems like they get bored sometimes with the, I don't want to say the process, because they are who they are, and they've, when you look at Tatum and Brown, this is years and years and years and years. They've punched their 10,000 hours, and but sometimes it seems like sometimes they get a little bored because of how great they are. Right. Not only as those two as individuals, but them as a team. And sometimes it looks like they get bored, and
Yeah, I mean, in a way, I feel like that's part of why they got caught in those first two games against the Knicks. Up 20, it's easy, in a sense. And then they stop maybe like the details, the spacing, going too soon or not waiting long enough and not getting downhill, not touching the paint, settling for longer jump shots. They're running out the other way. But like, that's just the story of their team, right? We know they have another gear, and then they show it in game 3, right? And they showed it for 3/4 of the first two games. So
for sure. Absolutely.
It's right there for them. But going back to playmaking, those guys have both, Jaylen Brown too, has taken a jump as far as being able to play cat and mouse, read the defense. But you look around the league, look at some of these guys like Jalen Brunson, Shai. These guys are supposed to be point guards, but they're actually more like two guards in a sense. So it's funny how it's kind of, it's all back. It's like, they can, of course, make plays, but they're so talented at scoring their footwork, they're finding the body, getting in the line, whatever it may be. It's just interesting how the shape of your initiator, like his profile can be anything from Jalen Brunson to Nikola Jokic nowadays, right? And that's what fascinates me about the game.
That's the beauty of the game right there, because you never know. You never know until that player starts to shape himself out. Right. To what type of, as a coach, obviously, you've been there and done that, but if you get a young Nikola Jokic or a young Jalen Brunson, and when you get them, it takes time to see how they shape out to now be able to say, oh, this is how we're going to play, and this is what we need to build around these guys. And the New York Knicks have built around Jalen Brunson on what his style is. Gritty guys, tough guys, long wing guys, and that's allowed him to be special on what he does, and like you said, being able to score the ball, get to the free throw line. He's a 3-level scorer, being able to get to the paint, use his footwork, things of that nature. We always talk about guys that went to Villanova. That's one thing they're going to have, and that's great footwork. You're never going to be off balance, and the same thing. Well, like you're saying, Shai, you're able to build. How do you build that, and then you build around it? That's a great organization. That's a great coaching staff.
Something to be said about that, like simplifying the way we play. We play through this person. We support them with these type of players. You're seeing obviously different shapes of the playmaker, but really what everyone wants to build around is spacing, right? And guys that can guard multiple positions. It's interesting. I still feel like I don't know how Jalen does it, man. He's got so much responsibility, and they can't get Drew off him a lot late in games. They send up a screen, Drew fights through. So he spends 12, 15 seconds of the shot clock trying to get Drew off him, does it, and then he's got to go at him again, right? And it's like, man, I don't know how he's able to sustain that level of performance at his size with the best guy guarding him every night, trying to make those plays.
Multiple guys, because Boston has multiple guys.
Multiple, right?
You have, You got, Drew Holiday, who's dogging you all the way up the court, and then you're trying to run a pick and roll. Now, Jalen Brown switches off onto you, and then you're trying to get another switch, and Derek White's on you. Now, at the end of the shot clock, sometimes you have Al Horford closing out on you, and you can win the foot race, but the guy's still 6'10", 6'11", and he's smart as hell. So, like,
and you got all long wings around him that are taking up space.
And that makes it even more dynamic of why, how it's just shows how great he is.
It's also great stories, right? Like him, Shai, Nikola Jokic. Like when they came in the league, no one was thinking superstars, right?
Well, no, I mean, Shai wouldn't be in OKC.
Right. If they knew this is what he was.
Jalen Brunson would still be in Dallas.
Right.
It's like, those are great stories where guys just like, they believed in themselves. Denver saw something in Nikola.
For sure.
Because at the same time, I believe Nurkic was there too.
He was the first round pick.
First round pick, yeah.
Nikola was the second round pick.
They saw something in him, and obviously they were right.
I mean, he forced their hand, right, with his development skill. He's such a unique player, right? Yeah. But I felt like it's interesting how the way the game's changed. Like even let's go back to like Russell Westbrook and Gilbert Arenas. Though in college, they weren't point guards, they weren't playmakers, they weren't making decisions. They were just great athletes. They were trying to find themselves. They developed into guys that could make the decision every time, right? And I think that those are guys that maybe we don't talk about as much, but like they matriculated into that decision maker, right? And so we're seeing that now. It's almost like that never happened in the old days, right? Like it was like, this is what you are, you play this position, you slot into these 5 spots. Now it's like, if a guy continues to develop, he can break the first line of defense, he's taking up real estate, creating opportunities. Can he now solve by scoring and passing in those situations? We're seeing so many guys become that throughout their career.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of off topic a little bit, but it's definitely on topic of what we're talking about. Like, I remember watching, NBA games when I was like teenager or maybe even younger, and it was almost like seeing Sam Perkins shoot a 3.
Right, it was wild.
Right. Seeing Manute Bol shoot a 3 was like,
what's happening?
Why is he 6'11", 7'6", shooting threes? It's like people was looking at the screen like, oh my God, like what is this? And just to go back to what you're saying, seeing guys like Russell Westbrook and Gilbert Arenas, guys coming out of college, UCLA, Arizona. Gil came off the bench. Right. Darren Collison was a starting point guard at UCLA before Russ got an opportunity. But when you talk about things that cannot be denied, you could, when they were on the court or you saw them, it was something that had, when we talk about the it factor. Yeah. Gil had the it factor.
Belief.
He had the belief in himself. He had the it factor. Every time he touched the court, you was like, oh shit, this guy's special. Yeah. This guy's special. Every time Russ stepped on the court, oh, this guy's special. We've never seen anything like this. Like it's like as soon as you get on the court, it's a missile. Right. And that's the beauty of the game sometimes, where you able, like those, I don't want to say diamond in the roughs, but I mean, you look at Gil, I think he was a second round pick. Right. To Golden State.
Well, you said it, like nowadays, everyone's one and done.
Right.
He came off the bench.
Right.
In college, right? So like, it's just interesting how, and don't get me wrong, there was heliocentric players, in different eras. Tiny Archibald.
Yeah, for sure.
Oscar Robertson, I think then you get to Magic and Bird in different ways, but they weren't like, it's just different how it's evolved. So it's like, it's just interesting how many guys now, and is it because we know more? Is it player development? Is it so much based on personality? But so many more guys are becoming these positionless players.
Do you think I always think about because there wasn't no social media back in, obviously the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, that we could have missed out on a lot of talent, in towns that word of mouth wasn't big enough, or player wasn't heard about, or nobody could, get the word out, and we missed out on a Russell Westbrook, that.
There's no question.
There's
no question.
I always think about that type of stuff.
That's not just social media, but YouTube. But technology's allowed the world to get so small, so much information. Like, think about it, like Bronny growing up could kind of see whatever he wanted to see on his phone.
Right.
I could see how, we work out. Obviously, he had access to, but he could see what everyone does, hear from everyone's opinion on this person. Back in those days, you kind of learned through your high school coach, your summer coach, your AAU coach, and stories.
Yeah, and if a kid happened to get invited to like a summer camp or something.
You see something?
Yeah.
Right? Like it was just different. I mean, I remember growing up, like trying to get better, just recording college games, VHS tapes, dating myself, but like recording games and like taking stuff off guys who never really, were great. Or taking the one-legged shot off Pat Ewing.
Right.
People don't think about the runner, Pat Ewing, but he would roll across the lane, go off his right foot, shoot with his right. That became something I had to do because I had to put people off balance. So, nowadays, people see that it's everything you ever want to see on your phone, right?
You don't have to miss anything.
You can see it all, and you can hear about it too. Explain this to me. Someone can explain it to you. Almost too much.
Right, almost too much.
Almost too much. So I think the NBA is like a tech industry in that respect, like most nowadays, is that information is just becoming so readily accessible. It's changing so quickly, even the micro adjustments. I think that's one of the issues I think we have a little bit with the game is trying to explain to fans all these little micro changes that are happening, within a series or within a month or a half a season, in 2-3 years. It's all changing pretty quickly, although it looks similar.
We're listening, fans. I want you guys to know that we're listening. We hear you guys. We're listening. We always want to make sure that the game of basketball is viewed from y'all point of view, and y'all love the product. Like, we're always trying to figure out a way to get better. But the game changes. The conversation on, I wish the game was like this compared to it's too far to even be thinking about those type of things.
It's impossible.
It's impossible.
Right.
Everything changes.
Yeah.
Everything changes.
Well, think about some of those factors in that too. Like, so, when I came in the league, you had 4 coaches. Now you have 9 or 10 on every staff, right?
Sometimes there's more coaches on the bench than players.
Right, 100%, 2 rows, 2 rows. Now you have 5 guys typically in a video room, and they have to be able to play with the guys that don't play. They have to be able to cut tape for every coach and player, right? Then you have analytics departments. Some could be 4 or 5 people deep, right? So there's so much information. Back in the day, you had a trainer, a head trainer, and assistant trainer, and then a strength coach got introduced, right? Now your performance team could be 10 people. It's sports scientists, physical therapists, strength and conditioning coaches, everything. So everything is continually evolving. And so I think it's inevitable it's going to change. It's going to change quick. And they're going to be sometimes really micro, little changes because there are so many brains on this every day, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But, the game is beautiful, man.
It is.
And we have to just evolve with it. Just like how we do in everyday life. We have to evolve with life. We also have to evolve with sports, the sport that we love, whatever that sport is. But that's the beauty of being able to understand and respect and appreciate where the game comes from, and also be able to understand and appreciate where it is today as well.
That's right. Well said. Well said.
I love that conversation. And it made me think whenever you guys were talking about just how you don't have access. You didn't have access back then to everything, and it's like that's what made Don Nelson so awesome was that he was willing to go look in Europe. Right. And no one else would go look in Europe. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, it also...
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Right?
You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, that's crazy.
There was no value in it perceived, right? Because it's like, why would I go over there? We got the best players in the world here, right? Now we see there's players everywhere. To your point about missing out on guys, I'm a big believer that there's talent everywhere. Like Bill Gates has become Bill Gates because he grew up near one of the only mainframes in the United States, apparently, or hub of the early internet, right? Like, not saying he's not a brilliant guy, but he happened to live right there. Who's to say that a kid in Mississippi or Mexico City that didn't have the same access couldn't have had the same power? Similar to basketball, right? Like, who knows if a kid grew up playing and he just didn't have that one person who believed, or he didn't have that coach that really knew the game, or the family dynamic didn't allow it, right? There's talent everywhere, and just trying to give people an opportunity is almost as important as the talent.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I think the other part is like, I'm obviously older than you, and my generation was slightly, not that much different, because you didn't have social media when you were in high school, did you?
No.
So, thinking in that way, like, what did we do? We went out and played.
That's it.
So we played with, we learned through the hours, through trial and error, more so than technology,
for sure.
the phone,
for sure.
the commercialization.
No basketball trainers and shit like that growing up.
Get your own rebound.
Get your own rebound. Spin the ball out, turn around, jab, do your jab steps, one dribble, shoot, one dribble, two dribble, shoot. Mike and drill.
Right. And that doesn't mean that's better.
Right.
Everything's getting better. It's just a matter of finding the balance. Like where can we add some of the things we learned in the past back into the flow of information? But man, that's why I like your point. I love the way you ended that with just, the game is beautiful, man. Like, I know a lot of players in my generation, man, are critical of the game. I watch these playoff games, man. I love the game. I love the NBA. I love the little battles, the chess matches, the randomness, but with principles. You know, to me, it's in a beautiful place.
And I loved it growing up. I mean, shit. They just, the older generation, they make you not want to love the game that I grew up watching.
Right.
Like, I grew up loving a Knicks versus Bulls playoff series, or a Pacers versus Knicks playoff series. Like, I love that. Like, or even like, you know, obviously I'm from a small town outside of Cleveland, but watching the Cavs get an opportunity to play against, you know, MJ. Didn't never see it live, obviously, but everybody's excited about it. Seeing, you know, Charles Barkley play in Phoenix, like take his talents to Phoenix and help them get to the finals was like so fucking dope.
Yeah.
I mean, Kevin Johnson, Dan Marley, like, you know, those guys are really good players, but they weren't like top of the line guys and got them to the finals. And then like the generation, they talk so much shit about the game today. And it makes you go back and watch the game back then, and it makes you not even want to appreciate it no more like I did when I was a kid. Like, it was like... Like,
it's a great point. It's a great point. When you go back and watch now, it doesn't feel as good as it did at the time.
It does not.
But it was great.
It was great.
The best on the planet.
It was great. Or, you know, these guys say, we can't be friends. You're friends with that. Why are you smiling on the court? And then someone goes to find a clip of, like, you standing next to this guy during the finals, smiling and laughing. It's like, what the what? Can we just be honest with it? Just be honest. Like, I don't understand.
Memories are fallible. Right, memories are not perfect.
Yeah, if you want your movie to have, they write their own script.
Right. And you know what? Maybe we should flip it and be appreciative that, and I should, you know, I'm an old head, but that the old heads are
You're
bitter
different.
and
You're
pissed.
different. You don't even try it. Don't even try it.
The bitter and pissed and competitive.
Do not try to be the CEO and president of the old head committee. Don't do it.
But maybe we should say
they're gonna string you out.
Right.
You're too positive. You're too appreciative.
Maybe I am.
Yes, you are. You're too positive and too appreciative for.
But maybe it's also cool that they're like, that's who they are, the competitive dudes. And they can't let go. And that's what made them great. And so, although it can be frustrating at times and we have to put it in perspective, it's also great that that's who they are, that's how they got where they got, and they won't let go.
It's all good. It's all part of the story.
All right. Thanks for watching Mind the Game. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe for more content.